What you're about to see is a lecture that is a part of the UPSC Essential course. UPSC Essential is our year-long course for UPSC 2025 and 2026 aspirants. This is a course which not just includes live classes, which you get access to recordings of for the next 3 years from the start of the course. It also has a full prelims and mains test series. Prelims test series includes both GS and CSAT. And not just that, it also has daily practice questions. It has, mentorship support. Also, recently you might have seen we have extended for the next 3 years, meaning if you join the course now, you get mentorship access for the next 3 years. Right. So why have we done this? The very simple reason is that the UPSC process itself is at least 2 years long. Let's say you clear UPSC in the first attempt itself. You will spend 1 year preparing before the exam, and 1 year is the exam cycle from prelims to the final result. So this is why 3 years of access to mentorship, 3 years of access to the recordings of the classes, and like an extensive test series, prelims, mains, and all of these are part of a single bundle. And this is the demo lecture for that course. So let us know if you like it, and if you want us to show something else, if you want to know more about this course, you can visit courses.upscprep.com and let us know in the comments.
Yes, very good evening to all of you and welcome to Introduction to Modern Indian History. It's very good to see all of you in this course, and my name is Nimish Kapoor and I am the faculty for Modern Indian History for all of you. So I'll briefly introduce myself before we jump into our course. As I've told you my name, I am an ex-assistant commandant CISF. I have worked in CISF for around 6 years in 2014 to 2020, after which I resigned from the service. So I have 6 years experience working in government. I was Chief of Security of Paradip Port in Odisha and have got an experience of traveling around 20 states in India for various kinds of duties. I'm a history enthusiast, even though I'm a BTech in electronics communication. I've also worked in TCS before that for a year. So, but I love history. One of my passion is reading a lot about Indian history, specifically modern Indian history. And that is why, I feel that this subject, the way we'll be approaching would be very fresh for all of you. It will not be just about mugging facts, but it will be about overall experiential journey, which we'll be, carrying forward. In this introduction to modern Indian history, we will be going into just the broader outline, just creating that understanding of history through timeline for you. That would be my primary objective. One of the most important things I will be looking from you is questions. Let's keep the session interactive, as if you're sitting right there in front of me and I'm interacting with you real-time basis, so that you don't feel that there is a disconnect because of this system between us. If there's any doubt, don't worry about the question. I would encourage you to ask so that I can answer your question real time, so that your query should not go back after the session, should not stay with you. And moreover, at the end of the session, I'll be sharing my email ID as well as my Telegram ID. If there's any doubts, if you forgot to ask me, you can reach out to me as well. Also, with the UPSCprep, I also conduct current affairs. You would have seen videos on Learn with UPSCprep. I would say, see, what do I expect from you now during this introduction to modern Indian history? 4 lectures. Just stay with me. Just understand the timeline. If there's any doubt, ask me. And go to the basic books, NCERT. Even though I've specified certain important books like Spectrum and all, that can surely come later on. But as of now, just a basic, broader understanding of the subject. I've not necessarily taken everything out of NCERT. It's the mixture of NCERT, Spectrum, but covered in a way which is absolutely absolutely covered in a way which is for you very easy to understand and assimilate in your overall understanding. I hope I'm audible. Just to reconfirm before we jump into our core topics. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for confirming, Himanshu. Okay. Thank you. Right. Shall we begin then? Let's begin with our first lecture on modern Indian history. And in this, I'll be telling you firstly, what is the civil service syllabus for modern Indian history in prelims and mains? Okay. The prelims says history of India and Indian national movement. Now let's divide into two parts. History of India and Indian national movement. So from entirely the modern Indian history is not the Indian national movement. Remember, Indian national movement, we would say rather it is more of revolt, starting from revolts from 57 and maybe few before until 1947. So this is specifying this period. Okay. Whereas history of India here would constitute something from basically advent of Portuguese till period of 1857. And even after that, which also includes social reforms, other things. So basically from 1500 to 1857 period, but not everything. So this history of India entire portion is little overlapping with medieval as well. Like for example, later Mughals, right? But we'll not go into that part because that you'll be covering in medieval anyhow. But we will be starting from advent of Europeans and eventually going through up to 1947. This is our broader how we will be covering syllabus of modern Indian history. Let's talk about mains. Modern Indian history. So what main syllabus? So now, before that, how many questions can you expect in UPSC prelims 2025? I hope most of you are giving the next year prelims, right? Or if not, or 26. Modern Indian history will remain modern Indian history will remain an integral part of the exam. And on an average, if you see last 10 years, average, the questions have been 5 to 7 out of 100 in modern Indian history. And in mains, in GS1 paper, it is around tentatively 40 marks average. That makes it very important. Why? Because since it is static in nature, it is very scoring. Given the cutoffs are very low, it becomes a very scoring subject if you have a very good control. Okay, Radhika is asking me history of India starts after the consolidation of India as a nation. Rather, the awareness about the nation, India as a nation itself is a part of this modern Indian history. Means that when we start the subject that is advent of Portuguese and moving forward, India is not considered as a nation as such. There are different dynasties, rules, states existing which have their independent rules, central control like that. But India as a nation is not existing. But that awareness comes with in this part, which we'll talk about somewhere in the 19th century, later 18th century. So once we go into that, when that awareness comes, Radhika will talk about it for sure. Okay. Now, moving forward, what is the syllabus for mains for modern Indian history? Modern Indian history from about the middle of the 18th century, which is 1750 onwards, until the present, present significant events, personality issues. So even they are also including, which is separate part itself, post-independence consolidation, which we'll not talk about it. That's a separate topic altogether. So 1750 to 1947, the freedom struggle, again, the freedom struggle, its various stages and important contributions from different parts of the country. Basically, both parts are exactly same. So we don't have to worry about, sir, are we doing prelim syllabus or are we doing main syllabus for modern Indian history? Both are integrated. Approach may be different. That is what I'm coming to. What is the approach for prelims? What is the approach for mains? Okay. Before that, what are the primary sources which we talk about? Spectrum, Modern India by Rajiv Ahir, very common, very, highest read book is this one. And a very good, I would say for an entrant level, someone who is very limited experience with history or is not do not go too much into history, this book is very good, pretty exhaustive at the same time. It is covering it, the way it should be, means the history. At the same time, many would say, sir, it looks like a guide. It does not, is not appealing enough. Many people have said that, agreed. It does not look like a very, very good book at first glance, but many have come back after reading many books into this book only. So I would say this is at the moment one of the best books you can have. Okay. Of course, later on when I come, I'll share my notes as well. This presentation also, whatever I'll share will be there immediately uploaded after the session. There is book from Plastic to Partition by Shekhar Bandyopadhyay, a pretty complex book. Few of you would have been history optional or history optional as well as history background would have read this book. A good book, written in a very good way. Good arguments are there. Modern Indian History by Sonali Bansal and Snehal Tripathi, TMH Publications. Pretty exhaustive one, but good enough. Pick anyone. As I say, from my perspective, this one is good. Now NCERT. Now this is an NCERT bit introduction. Which are the NCERT books you are referring to? Don't go into old, new. So there are 8th class NCERT book. Have you read it till now? R past 3. Have you read it till now? Okay, good. Those who have read it, good. So now what I would recommend is, if you've not read, those who've not read should start from this. After going through my lecture, start, like it would have 8 to 10 chapters. In this 1 week till 10th, you finish accordingly, parallelly the way we are moving forward. Okay, the way we are moving forward, pick up that book, 8th class NCERT. Absolutely basic book in creating interest, understanding of modern Indian history. Many people directly jump into Spectrum and they are absolutely new into modern Indian history and they become lost and they are like, okay, we are lost in the field of facts. How do we now manage these facts? So this is, I would say 8th class NCERT is absolutely a very good book. So only one book for a week? No, not only one book, one more, just one more. We are not touching Spectrum. So what are the 3 things we are going to do? You're going to follow my presentations, primary. Then R past 3, that should be done in one sequence. The second is class 12th NCERT. The part 3 book, part 3 of modern Indian, the part 3 book is modern Indian history. History book, okay? That is a different approach kind of book. It's but very interesting, very important. I won't recommend going to Bipin Chandra. Okay, it's also one of the books, but I feel that it does not do enough justice from 1857 to 1947. What about Modern India by Bipin Chandra? Modern India by Bipin Chandra Ishika is a very good book, which should be done later on. As of now, primary, if you're absolutely new, 8th class NCERT, class 12th, and this. See, if you go along with me, you'll have so much interest. Automatically, you'll start picking up books. See, I was a person 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I would pick up history and I would be lost. And in my attempts, I realized that history is something which cannot be crammed, but should be taken interest in. And then you start enjoying the subject and then it does not grow, you'll start enjoying the area. It's not about fact learning anymore. It's about going through the timeline as if you're witnessing yourself. The history is about characters and you witnessing those characters and how things are shaping in front of you. If you just look at that fact, I have to remember, and you have no idea of what personality is that, what is happening, which timeline we are in, you will be lost. So history, 8th class NCERT is a very good entry level book if you're absolutely new. And class 12th will consolidate a bit on that, 2 things. But this presentation, 4 sessions will do very good. Yeah, themes in Indian history part 3. Yes. Yeh book hai Radhika. This is the one which I am talking about. If there's any question, right, use this. There's one Q&A. Some are asking there. I would say not use Q&A. Let's use chat for the questions, because that for me, it is more real time in answering. In the chats, what I have a parallel window open. If you can ask from there, that would be better. So with respect to sources, things are clear. Or should I make it once more clear? 8th class NCERT to begin with, along with my content, class 12 themes in Indian history part 3, that will consolidate. Now, later on, when you go into the next level of study, Spectrum Modern India, or if you think that no, someone has recommended me my institute, or if anywhere you've come from, let's say you're doing something from someone else, you have a mentor also, I'm not fixing, but out of these 3, or even let's say, let's pick 4th also, Modern India by Bipin Chandra. That I would keep it at 4. There's one more very famous in my time I used to study, which is India's Struggle for Independence by Bipin Chandra. Again, that is a book which does not do justice before 1857, so I won't recommend that. So these are the ones. Himanshu is asking, sir, postmodern history after 1947, do we have to study separately or from spectrum itself? Let's firstly concentrate here. Let's do this, and I'll tell you, don't worry. We'll talk about that. But as of now, let's just focus on modern Indian history. That is a small topic which we'll do, which I'll tell you good sources eventually. But as of now, modern Indian history, that is what we'll begin with. Okay. Okay. So what do I expect, or what is important from the perspective of modern history for prelims? What and when is more important here? So facts becomes important here. Facts. Okay. Then timeline becomes very important. Timeline. So questions, which I'll talk about 2023 questions as well. I'll show it to you, mains and pre, just so that you just have an understanding what to expect. So what and when is more important from prelims perspective in modern Indian history? Factual clarity and timelines. So factual clarity, that when you move forward, let's say Governor General in time of let's say this Regulating Act of 1773. You'll be saying, okay, Regulating Act, when 1773, who was the governor? So facts become Warren Hastings, Governor, Regulating Act of 1773. Facts become more important here because questions are more factual in nature in prelims. Whereas mains I'll talk about separately. So timeline at the same time is very important. Context from current affairs. Karthik is asking, should we start now onwards to read Spectrum book? If you have read modern history basics you're aware of, then you'd start with it. If you have not read modern Indian history till now, absolutely new, I would say first go through the NCERTs and then only jump into it. Okay. And context from current affairs. Now you're asking, what is the context from current affairs? Does history has current affairs? So it's not about context. So here word important is context. That means that in modern Indian history, what are the narratives going on in media? Like, for example, last 2 years, a lot has been talked about revolutionaries. There's been books also written about revolutionary, very good book. I would recommend it to you as well to read by Sanjeev Sanyal. Then there are books written on means a lot of books written on biographies on people in modern Indian history. There are also new areas, means people who've been unrecognized till now for their contributions are being recognized now. So we have to pick up that as well. That can be from newspapers, maybe additional web reading. That also is becoming important. So it is not just the book from everything is coming. It is also about understanding the narrative. I hope you understood that. Okay. Now, modern history for mains. Here, in-depth and broader understanding of entire timeline is necessary. Now, micro level understanding in terms of what was the situation in late 18th century. Why was British able to consolidate that? What were the other forces in action in Indian subcontinent? Like that. So these are the certain things. Like this way, you have to start thinking there. I assure you, if you stay with me, it will eventually develop. And the way we'll be approaching, you automatically will be starting to think that way. Okay. Now, why is more important than what and where? So why here? Why is more important than what and where? What and where is for prelims. Here, why this happened? Why was this, right? So why becomes important here? Facts and timelines add value to answers in answer writing. So in why, when you're writing, when you add facts, timelines, more accurate information, that will add value to your answer. Means in a 10 marker, if you have a definite fact and a timeline mentioned, it can fetch you more than average marks. Okay. So these are the certain things like what is being asked in mains. Now, this is the prelims 2023 questions. Who among the following rulers of medieval Gujarat surrendered due to Portuguese? So here it comes in a topic of advent of Europeans, especially here Portuguese. You'll read it, but that is again more fact-based if you see. By which one of the following acts was the Governor General of Bengal designated as the Governor General of India? Very easy one. Very straightforward one. Yeah, of course. Yeah, Ishika is saying D. Yeah, this is the correct one. Now, very straightforward one, but it is again a factual question. With reference to Indian history, Alexander Rea, A.H. Longhurst, Robert Seville, James Burgess, and Walter Elliot were associated with archaeological excavations. We'll read it when we'll go through it. Okay. Consider following statement. 7th August is declared as a National Handloom Day. It was in 1905 that Swadeshi movement was launched on the same day. This is correct. This is correct. But is this the correct explanation? Of course, if this is correct, automatically, most likely it should become because Swadeshi was promoted. So answer should be A. Like this. So we'll go through it. But this kind of understanding, fact-based, everything will be created. But first, kuch bhi karne se pehle, if you have to do anything, first is create framework. Like if you have to plan a building a structure, do you go like build walls and start doing interior design? No. You first plaster the wall. You paint the wall. You define the the necessary appliances or the fittings has to be done. Then only interior is done. So we'll be going in creating framework first approach, creating that broader outline, and then going step by step into the nitty-gritties of everything, every single part. Similar questions like this. So I hope you understood when I say what is fact-based. Now let's look at mains 2023 questions. 3 questions broadly were there. What was the difference between Mahatma Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore in their approach towards education and nationalism? So now this is not direct question. So you have to decipher what was Mahatma Gandhi's approach on education and nationalism. And Rabindranath Tagore had a very different approach. He's written a book called Nationalism in itself, where he's talked about Japanese nationalism and nationalism from other world and how India should have it. Education also he's talked about, and he's been one of the biggest practical exponents of education in India, right? So, it is more about understanding there and then comparing it and writing it. So it's not about directly picking up from a book, but more of an analysis as well. Okay. Bring out the socio-economic effects of introduction of railways in different countries of the world. Very interesting. Now you would say, is this a modern Indian history question? So it is a beautiful blend of modern Indian history and world history questions. But here we can also be very smart. If you read through modern Indian history, you'll understand that at the time of Lord Dalhousie, he introduced railways in India, starting from Thane, Mumbai, Bombay route. Okay, and thereafter. So in history about railways, it is being discussed in India. But at the same time, across the world, there you would understand that how you can write it, that at that time, if you know the world history events, the railways were being built across the world because of industrial revolution, steam engines, steel production, sleepers being built en masse, all this, if you are aware about world history. So it's a blend of world history and modern Indian history. How did the colonial rule affect the tribals in India? And what was the tribal response to the colonial oppression? It's a very straightforward chapter where tribal revolts and movements have been discussed. Why that happened, what was the response, how British respond, everything has been mentioned there. Okay. So now you've broadly understood. What is a syllabus, what you have, what it should be, we've read about syllabus, we've seen the papers, and how to approach pre and how to approach main specific. But we won't isolate that. Broadly, it has to be just kept in your mind. So what to expect in our introductory sessions? General understanding of timeline will be there. Clarity of sequence of events will be there. Facts, not important at this stage. If you're thinking, sir has told about this fact, but I'm not able to retain that at this moment. So would that be an issue at this moment? No. If you are just following the timeline and the sequence of events, but if you're unable to remember facts right now, don't worry. You will be able to do the facts eventually, but right now is the framework, which for me is more important. Interest creation in the subject is very important for me. I expect that from you, and that will happen if you just stay with me. If you interact with me in the session, you'll start liking the subject. Visualization of history I expect from you. As if, let's say, any one of you, you're there, right there, witnessing the Battle of Plassey, Battle of Buxar, Anglo-Mysore Wars. What is happening? What is the reason? Witnessing history, not just reading and remembering, but visualizing history. That is why in the presentations you'll see a lot of images, and I'll have brought it in a way which is easy to consume and easy to visualize. Okay. And also I'll create a story line so that you can visualize yourself. I hope you're with me. What do I expect? Right? Would you follow it? Okay, thank you. Very interesting question which I have from Pragya. She's asking me, when do we start making notes? I would say I'm a person. So firstly, whatever content, be it the introductory and the detailed sessions later on, will be in notes form itself. That is notes for you already there. And that would be more than enough. If you still feel that I'm a person, I like making my own notes, that should be, if you're reading Spectrum for the second time, that is when you should start making notes. Why not first time? Because you'll start feeling everything is important. I'll write everything. So your 1 hour will be going into reading, and 2 to 3 hours will be going into just copying what you're reading. That is why. Okay. I've already, Himanshu, told about the resources. Yeah. And Himanshu, so do we also have to study Tamil Nadu? No, I've already discussed about that. You have just in the starting of the session. You can see that. Okay, let's move forward now into the content. Now, advent of Europeans is what we start. What do we mean by advent of Europeans? Now, year is 1498. Vasco da Gama comes to India, lands at Calicut. And he finds India. Now, what do we mean by find? Have not anybody found India earlier? Of course they have, but this is the new route, sea route through which it has been found. That is why it is said he discovered India. So, Sai is asking, so please finish class by 9 p.m. Yeah, I'll finish. Don't worry. I'll finish the class by 9 p.m. Okay. So, Vasco da Gama lands at Calicut. Now that is the starting point of modern Indian history, because everything is now interlinked from here. So the first who came was Portuguese, followed by Dutch. Dutch are currently people from Holland, Netherlands. Okay. Then English, that is the British eventually. Okay. Danes, Danish even came, Denmark, and French. So these are, so broadly, this is the sequence of advent of Europeans in India. Now, why they came and why there was a need for new sea routes to India? Why there was need for new sea routes to India? So what happened was that till now there was a monopoly of trade with India of Arabs, merchants, and Italians. Arab merchants, Italians from Venice and Genoa. Okay. Now they were supplying the Indian traded goods eventually to the Western Europe. But by the time it reached them, it was very expensive. And then it was decided. So West European states and merchants began to search for new and safer sea routes to India eventually, and the Spice Islands of Indonesia. Why? Number one, because as I said, there was this monopoly and they wanted to break the Arab and Venetian trade monopolies. Venetia is the Italian kingdom at that time, which was active in trading. To bypass Turkish hostility. At that time, Turkish were hostile to the trade and especially were in on the, as Rishabh has mentioned, that there were certain hostilities in the region. To open direct trade relations with the East, to direct trade relations. So they were indirect. By the time the product reached them, it was very expensive. And moreover, the traders at that couldn't have enough profit. What were being, consolidated, or what profits were being earned by the Italians as well as Arabs. They were earning a lot because of this trade. So this was the need for new sea routes. And that is where Portuguese came. Portuguese then got the approval, that Spain and Portugal were the first two which had a fleet. So Spain said, okay, Spain and Portugal. So Portugal said that we'll go from this. So they created an imaginary line between the Atlantic Ocean, that everything here east of this we will discover. Spain said we will, and so they were trying to find alternate sea routes to India and the islands of Indonesia. So that is why Christopher Columbus found America and the Caribbean islands, considering it to be India. That is why the name West Indies. Okay. And that is why the name for Indonesia also becomes East Indies, because all were trying to find India. Okay. So what brought Portuguese here? Spirit of adventure. At that time, they wanted to find alternate route to India anyhow. So this spirit of adventure. They became advanced in shipbuilding and the science of navigation. So they had better ships and they could now had that belief that through alternate sea routes, we can find India. For spices trade, spices were becoming very expensive there in those regions. So they felt that they can earn a lot of profits through spices trade, textile trade. They also, the cloth of India, the muslin, which was very popular at that time. So for textiles trade, to find alternate route to break monopoly of Arabs and Italians because of land. Fine. Now, why Portuguese eventually became successful? So if you see, I'll talk about the timeline shortly. So from 1498, they came. And from 1500 to 1600, they had a lot of monopoly in trade. And setting up few of the centers, like in Calicut, in Kochi, in Kerala, few areas, and Goa, right? Certain areas like that. Now, what were the reasons for their success? So the navy of Mughals at that time was weak. I'm not talking about before 1500, but eventually later on. That is 1526 is when Babur came, right? So after that, when Mughals were consolidating, their navy wasn't strong enough. So that is why Portuguese were successful eventually because of the weak navy of Mughals. They also had control over high seas. High seas means that since they started moving in the high seas from starting Atlantic, moving around the Cape of Good Hope through African continent, around that, and then eventually coming to. So they also got control of the high seas, combined the use of force with trade. So they also had their own military naval setup on the ships itself. So it was not just trade. They also used force wherever necessary. South India was outside Mughal influence. South India was outside the Mughal influence. Because of why, they could consolidate those small areas. And Mughals, when they were strong in the northern part, they were still weak in the southern part. Mutual rivalries of Indian princes were there, and they made use of it and consolidated. And they had strict discipline of soldiers. So unlike the armies in India, which were not regimental, which were not had strict discipline and had proper administration, Portuguese, on the other hand, had proper trained, disciplined soldiers. Okay. Venkatasaya Anski, can you do tomorrow class, sir? No, the classes are on 3, 5, 7, and 10. Okay. So the classes are according to this. Why Venkatas? So I'll keep it separately because the flow is there. I hope till here you've understood how Portuguese became successful. We won't go into who were the Portuguese. That will be in the nitty-gritties. Right now, you just should focus upon, okay, when they came, how they consolidated, what was the reason for their success. Now, English. They are very important. 1588, the defeat of Spanish Armada, which is their naval fleet, by English, led to opening of sea passage. So till now, there is a monopoly of Spain and Portugal. They were the powers who were, connecting with the world through their naval fleet. But in 1588, the English naval fleet or English defeated the Spanish naval fleet, which led the opening of the sea passage to the east. And in 1599, a company to trade with the East was formed by a group of merchants known as merchant adventurers. This eventually became the East India Company. Initially, registered as merchant adventurers. In 1600, they got the royal charter by Queen Elizabeth, and this became East India Company. That they said that they got the royal sanction that you go and do trade. Himanshu is saying, sir, is the previous route through Suez Canal? No, it's not Suez Canal. It's land route. West Asia, from land, Afghanistan, Central Asia, that is the route. Okay. 1613, company established their first factory at Surat, and English had opened their first factory in South at Machilipatnam or Masulipatam. Now, just telling you how they consolidated. 1588, they defeated Spanish. 1599, they formed merchant adventurers. 1600, they got royal charter. The royal charter is, Queen is saying, it is our sanction. You go and find India and you do trade with us directly with India. Okay, through that. Okay. 1613, the company eventually established. 1603, who established in Surat. Now, there is a lot of discrepancies between dates, this and that. So some say 16 dates. So there is, so broadly, as of now, 2-3 sources have verified 16 and 13. In fact, British didn't come till 1605. 1603, it was established by Dutch, most likely. Okay, so because in 1602, Dutch was the first eventually established their company. In 1603, they established in Surat. Surat was very popular, so don't worry about it, Mansi, at this moment. Right now, the sequence of events will go into the fine-tuning of details. So as of now, just understand the sequence of events. 1615, King James I sent Sir Thomas Roe as an ambassador to court of Jahangir, and he got royal farman. Royal farman is that Mughals are saying that you have our authority that you can do trade. Why they gave? Because they'll get tax benefit out of it. Means whatever trade they'll do, the Mughals will get some money, of course, right? That is why they've given this royal farman. Now let's understand this broadly again, timeline. Arrival of Vasco da Gama in 1498. First factory opened by Portuguese at Calicut. And Portuguese captured Goa in 1510. 1600 establishment of East India Company and establishment of Dutch East India Company in 1602. Right? You can see clear cut that for 100 years, Portuguese, it was not entire country, remember, Portuguese established themselves eventually in certain parts like in Kerala, Goa, Basai, Diu, and Hooghly, some part. That is the major. Right now, not go into micro level details, but this is 100 years they were there. Eventually, English came, Dutch came, French came, Danes only too limited to certain areas. Portuguese were, so Abhijit is asking, Portuguese were responsible for exploration and trade towards East. Then how did English and Spanish had conflict? So by that time, when Spanish, there was an initial agreement. But after a certain time, Spanish also started exploring the regions on the other side. And so were Portuguese. Portuguese found Brazil and Spanish started coming towards the other side because now the initial agreement was discontinued. And that is why the Spanish, so if you see in 1400s, that agreement, in 1588 was only when English defeated Spanish Armada. Okay. Right. Now, thereafter, first factory of Dutch at Masulipatam, 1605, 1613, first factory of British in Surat, 1608, Captain Hawkins arrived in India, 1615, Thomas Roe came to India and Jahangir issued Farman, Royal Farman. Right. There are some other, just quickly, Francis Day founded city of Madras in 1639. Not too important, just so that you are aware about, as we're moving in timeline, what is happening. Because when I'll jump to the next part, which is 1700 onwards, you'll say, okay, sir, you've told us about the factories till 1600 something, but now you're jumping to 1700. What has happened? So I'm telling you, Francis Day found city of Madras is British. 1662, Bombay was given. Now, this Bombay was given to King Charles II of Britain by the Portuguese as a dowry, right? And eventually, this Bombay was given to East India Company on £10 a year lease. Isn't the company and the English same? Vivek is asking in the previous slide, statement under 1613, slightly confusing. So let me again tell you, company is a private set of people. Here, the government isn't involved as of now. So British, so English. So remember, English is the from where England they came. So they were English company, English East India Company, but they were private company. Private company primarily made to do trade with India. When they were made, they had no plans to conquer India. I'll tell you how they took advantage of it. But as of now, the English, so company, I hope you understand this. Don't get confused unnecessarily here, because as of now, until 1858, government has no say until only the regulating and charter acts have been passed by the government, which we'll talk separately. 1664, now French East India Company was established far, far later, which was 1664. And they set up their first factory at Surat. 1686, there was British East India Company attacked Hooghly at the time of Aurangzeb. And they were reprimanded and they were defeated Now here East India Company attacked because of some issue they had. They defeated, we'll talk about separately. But thereafter it was given the trade back because after they apologized and they said that the company said that they'll abide by the farman as well as whatever has been discussed as the terms of agreement for trade. Now moving forward. Now what is happening is, now till now all these have come, which is Portugal, Portuguese, English. English here is in company, English East India Company, English East India Company, Dutch, and French. Primarily, this is what we've discussed. They've all come for trade. Remember this, trade. Because they want to do trade, they want to earn profits. And these are companies who want to trade with India for profits. But during this process, Portugal conquered some of the regions, like Goa, the Basain, these are certain regions, even in certain regions in Kerala, that English, Dutch, and French were given certain areas to open factories. So this is what is the current status now. Now, Mughals till 1707, as you've read, you would have gone through. Who is the ruler till 1707? Anyone in the chat? Mughals? Aurangzeb, yes. Right, Himanshu Swati. Aurangzeb, yes, Pragya. So Aurangzeb is the ruler, but now he has died. 1707, as you've read, that after that, later Mughals, a lot of Mughals come step by step, right? Eventually, there's a series of Jandar Shah, Farooq Siyar, Muhammad Shah Rangila, right? But this is the period of weakening of Mughals. I'll talk about that, why they became weak. Because of this weakening, the regional states also started growing. There were now these regional states. So the more the, Mughals started weakening, the area under them started reducing. Now there are three types of regional states which started growing. Successor states. Now what is the successor states? Basically, these are breakaway Mughal provinces, which were there as Mughal provinces, and they still recognize sovereignty of Mughal Empire. They still consider the Mughal king as the emperor of the empire entirely. These are states of Hyderabad, Awadh, and Bengal. These three states. Then there are independent states. These emerged due to destabilization of Mughal Empire. These are Rajputs, Mysore, and Kerala. And then there are rebel states. Rebels. These are new states, Rohilkhand and Farrukhabad, whereas other states which have been very strong here is Marathas, Sikhs, and Jats. Now, if we understand through map, this is what 1750 regional states look like. Now, this is the Maratha Confederacy. So, Mughal eventually by 1750 was restricted to just this area. Just this area. So, why this happened, we'll talk about it. But now let's look at this. So, mapping is very important parallelly. Because when I talk about visualization, I also want you to visualize about the map. Okay, what region I'm talking about, which part of the country I am. Okay, so Mughals, the successor states means that eventually from which were part of the, so these are Mughals, Hyderabad, Bengal, and Awadh. Now they still say that Mughals are, means they work under the sovereignty, but they are pretty much independent in their own functioning. There is rebel states like Maratha, Punjab, Rohilkhand. Then there are other states also, just telling for your reference, Mysore, very important, Travancore, Rajputs. Now we'll understand. For us to understand, this mapping is pretty much important. And there is this Carnatic state. Don't confuse the Carnatic state in that century to present day Karnataka. Biggest mistake done by a lot of students. Biggest mistake is thinking, oh, Karnataka, it is Karnataka state, but Carnatic state is a modern day coastal Tamil Nadu and Andhra region. Okay. Now, what was the cause of decline? Now am I still audible? Someone is saying that the video has stuck. Is it fine? Okay, thank you. Right. So I hope now you've seen, now these companies have come, have established factories and are doing trade. Whereas there is a very strong central Mughal and some states around it. Now Mughals start declining after the death of Aurangzeb. Why? Number one is policies of Aurangzeb. So some of the communal policies, some of the policies are also with respect to jizya being jizya tax reinstated. So the policies divided the people. No, I'm not muted. Yeah. So someone is saying that I should use Hindi. I would like to use it, but there are a lot of students who wouldn't. So shall I use Hindi in between if everyone agrees here and there? Because I am pretty concerned there are a lot of students who are joining. Okay. So I'll not use Hindi because there are a lot of students who are from Southern India. So I'll keep it strictly English. Okay. Just keeping because I've got a feedback. Okay, fine. Now, policies of Aurangzeb that started dividing society. Degeneration of Mughal nobility. That is very important. The power of Mughal came from also the nobles were very strong, but they were very loyal to the Mughals. But eventually, after him, nobles started interfering in the court politics. And this eventually they eventually started using, try to make their own successors as well. For example, there were the famous brothers, during the time of Muhammad Shah Rangila. Then there were noble like Nizamul Mulk 1922, in which he became vizier but were not happy, eventually went and formed Hyderabad. There were court factions. There were different groups within the courts. The rise of Marathas became strong power because of which Mughals were declining. Their military weakness. So, for example, there's a Jagirdari crisis where happened. So a lot of lands were given, but the military in itself was not becoming strong. There was no upgradation of the technology. Still the old methods and those things were being used. The discipline wasn't there. Economic bankruptcy. Why? Because of this also, which is attacks by Nadir Shah and Ahmad Shah Abdali. So in 1937, you will hear Nadir Shah attacked Delhi, taking with him the Peacock Throne, Kohinoor, looting Delhi at the time of Muhammad Shah Rangila. And then 1948 till 60s, 1737. 1737, not 19. Just 1737, Nadir Shah attacked Delhi. 1748 to 1760s, Ahmad Shah Abdali attacked Delhi, Punjab, Lahore. So it led to economic bankruptcy. Also, the states became independent and were not going enough, like Hyderabad, Awadh, other states. So overall, there was economic bankruptcy growing within Mughals. Weak successor. So the successors were very weak. They couldn't take. So Muhammad Shah Rangila, the name Rangila stuck with him because it was not his surname, but because his attitude was Rangila. Rangila in Hindi, in English, would mean it was a very colorful personality. He liked to enjoy everything rather than keeping an eye on the state overall functioning of the state. Continuous war of succession. There was continuous wars of succession within so nobility, took advantage of it. At the same time, one faction was fighting the other, so there was continuous war of succession. This led to weakening of the Mughals, eventual decline of the Mughals. And this, if you see, has created some vacuum. Bengal is pretty much independent now, Awadh, Hyderabad, but there are now smaller states. And the English East India Company and the companies are doing trade. Now, using this scenario, how things turned, we'll talk about it. Till now, are things clear? Okay. So what was the reasons for now British success in India? Now, eventually how the British or the company took food, became strong. Now, when I say company, eventually company at that time were also carried with them soldiers, weapons, because just in case they were, threatened or they had an issue, they should also be saved. You are protected. So they had superior arms and military strategy. They had much more superior arms. They were disciplined, strategy, proper strategy. Military discipline and regular salary were being given. So that is why they were also motivated force personnel. Civil discipline was also then fair election system. In terms of election system means that whosoever was coming as an administrator, working in the company, they were elected in a proper system. And there was even the discipline in the administration. There was effective leadership. There were leaders time to time who became, who were very, for example, even though he is considered one of the most evil personalities in India, but for British, they consider him a big personality there. It's Robert Clive. He is considered for the word loot. The loot word came into the dictionary because of him, because looted like anything. But then at the same time, he was responsible for the victory of British in Bengal to create that foothold in Bengal. Ujjwala is asking, sir, did Mughals follow primogeniture rule in succession? No, they didn't. It was equally divided among the successors. All were considered equal. Anyone who's more powerful tried to claim control. That was it. Okay, strong financial backup. They had strong finances, that they were shareholders of the company. The company had shareholders. They were putting money from there. So money was not a problem. So they had money to invest. They had nationalist pride. So they belonged to a nation called England. At that time, they had the national pride. India at that moment was not, it was a divided nation. It was a nation, but the awareness about nationalism, sense of patriotism, belonging to a nation wasn't there. Weakness of Mughals after Aurangzeb also was taken advantage by British. So these were the reasons for British success in India. Now let's understand the British conquest of Bengal, starting with the background, and then we'll go. Now this is a starting point of how British consolidated control in India, starting with Bengal. But for that, we need to go in a little background from where we left earlier. Now, British established their first factory in Bengal at Hooghly in 1651. Okay, just factory for trade. In 1698, they obtained the zamindari of Sutanati, Kalikata, and Gobindgarh. These are three villages. Now, if you say this word Kalikata, that becomes Calcutta. So, three villages of the zamindari rights of three villages were obtained by the British, which were Kalikata, Sutanati, and Govindpur. Abhishek is asking, sir, the East India Company intended to set up the business and eventually realized they could divide and rule, or were they sent for conquering purposes? As I've discussed, they came for trade. They somehow, were in a situation where they could take control of Bengal. I'll talk about that. And then they thought that, okay, we need to now keep ourselves safe. And also, I'll talk about it. So as of now, if you're seeing, they are just for trade, just for trade. Now I'll tell you how they did, how they conquered. So factories in Bengal were placed under Fort William. A very good book, I'll tell to everyone. So a beautiful book written by William Dalrymple, The Anarchy, on how the company was formed and how the company, East India Company, took foothold. If you ever get free time, if you love reading, that is an excellent, excellent book you must read. The Anarchy by William Dalrymple, on how British controlled, the company controlled foothold in India. Okay. Now factories in Bengal were placed under Fort William. Now what is the Fort William? Now they created a fort like structure, basically a headquarter of British in Bengal. That was Fort William. Okay. Whereas Fort St. George is in Madras, for the headquarter around Madras. But for Bengal, it is Fort William. 1717, as a very important thing happened. Now at that time, Emperor Farooq Sayar granted trade privileges to the company. And Murshid Quli Khan declared himself Nawab of Bengal. Two important things happened. Now this trade privileges, what was this trade privileges? This is Dastaks. That is also known as Royal Farman or the Magna Carta of that changed the entire things. Now what is Dastak? Now Dastak is a kind of a document which now the company could issue to its traders, that they shouldn't be interrupted or by any official of the state for conducting trade. This dastak was starting being misused also by the company for their own personal trade as well. Like let's say one is the company's trade, but one is the trade which the people of the company started doing for themselves also to earn profits. And they started misusing dastaks as well. And at that time, Murshid Quli Khan declared himself Nawab of Bengal, but under the sovereignty. If you remember, it is a successor state. So Murshid Quli Khan declared himself Nawab of Bengal. At the same time, what happened? Emperor Farooq Sayar gave trade privileges, and the bulk of the trade was being done through Bengal by issuing dastaks. Now Ali Vardi Khan, now let's say 1740. Ali Vardi Khan did not allow fortifications of French and English factories at Chandernagore and Calcutta respectively. Now this is the first time conflict. Now there is a factory, Fort William, right? This is the headquarter, but they didn't allow the fortification of it, that we won't allow fortification. At that time, Ali Vardi Khan is the Nawab of Bengal. He said, no fortifications allowed. You are running trade under our control, and you're not allowed to have any kind of fortification of your factories or headquarters. 1757, very important thing now. Siraj-ud-Dawla becomes the Nawab of Bengal, 1757. And he's a person who is very, you can say, is not happy with the British. Because he feels that they're misusing a lot of things, dastaks. At the same time, they are also interfering, like they're creating now, they're fortifying. So he feels that, they should be taught a lesson. So we'll move forward. Now, this is where Battle of Plassey happened, and I'll go through the background of it. Little background, just to create that story of what happened. Now, in 1757, Siraj-ud-Dawla, went and fought British at the Fort William because they were fortifying. British were defeated and few people were captured and kept in a room which didn't even have windows, and that led to killing of over 100 Englishmen. This is known as Black Hole Tragedy. Okay, later on, the factory was restored and they were allowed to trade, but still they were not abiding by the orders of the Nawab. So Sirajuddaulah thought, okay, we will fight them. Now the thing is that he had a big army whose commander was Mir Jafar. And by that time, company called in their reserves from Madras and under the commandership of Robert Clive. Now they fought and Robert Clive defeated Sirajuddaulah in Battle of Plassey 1757. Why? And the biggest reason is Mir Jafar was the commander-in-chief of Bengal presidency or the Bengal Nawab. He withdrew with his forces leading to defeat of the Nawab at that time. So he backstabbed because there was this agreement in the background that, okay, we'll withdraw and an arrangement will be made. And what happened thereafter because of this? Mir Jafar was proclaimed the Nawab of Bengal. Robert Clive confirmed as the governor of Bengal. He made himself the governor of Bengal. So you can see, even though Mir Jafar became the Nawab, Robert Clive now had the influence in the politics of the state as a governor. English company was granted undisputed right to free trade. Not even trade, free trade means no taxes in Bengal, Bihar, and Odisha. Hello, yeah, can you hear me? Am I audible? Okay, fine. So the company was granted Zamindari, the company of 24 Parganas near Calcutta because of Mir Jafar paid a large amount of money as personal present to Clive. Personal present to Clive and compensation to the company's losses. Hello. Am I audible or is it the quality of audio has changed? Or is it fine? Okay, it is fine. Thank you. Thank you for confirming. Right. Because I'm using a mic, so I have to just check if the mic quality is still there. Right. All the French settlements in Bengal were surrendered to the company. So now somehow you can see there is this becoming of the undisputed. So Bhavya is asking, is this post of governor the same we have in present time? No. As of now, you just think governor is basically a post which is parallelly like more of a resident or more of a consultant or someone who has to be consulted in taking any decision. Radhika is asking 2-3 minutes break de dijiye. I will give. Let's have a 2-3 minutes break, but we'll continue from here. Very interesting. What is going to happen here after? So let's have, if it's fine, let's have 2 minutes break. Time is 8:07. So let's reconnect at 8:10. Okay, let's connect at 8:10 and I'll move forward and tell you about what happened thereafter. This is the very interesting part, most important part, and must, thoroughly looked into. So let's have a 2 minutes break. In the meantime, if there's any question, you can you can text me here on the chat and I'll get back to you. I hope presentation is fine, able to understand. Is it interactive, clear, to the point? Okay. This is the portion which most of the students leave. I'm being asked, please share your email ID and Telegram. So I'm writing it down. So please, you can make note of it. So my email ID is, so I would also like to know my students because for me, for each one of you, so remember that one. Each one of you, let me tell you that I'm here because I believe that you're here to be in top 100 rank. You just need one seat, each one of you. And I'm here not just to teach you, but to motivate you, guide you, mentor you, to ensure that you achieve what you've come for. So, whatever I can through the interactions would motivate you, guide you in the best way possible. Well, this is my email ID. I hope everyone can see. nimishkapoor@gmail.com. You can reach out to me here. If you want, so Telegram, if you want to search, you can search through this Telegram ID of Nimish. Yeah, Nimish789. This is the Telegram ID. You can ping me. Right. Now, Pallavi is asking, will the PPT suffice our preparation? This PPT and the subsequent PPTs, which will be given later on when you will go in the advanced course, is going to be an excellent source material for you along with your standard book. Nothing else. This year, students who are giving pre, I had conducted course for PT and I provided them 650 slides content. And the reception of the content has been amazing. People have loved it. They say that the revision is very quick, very fast, and very effective. And moreover, I've come out with certain videos on also the Learn with UPSCprep channel. Just to consolidate. Right now, you don't need to go into that channel and see those videos because it's particularly targeted for 2024 students. So this PPTs will suffice along with the material. So Mansi is saying, sir, after 8th NCERT, we have to read 12th. Yes. There's no 9th, 10th. Yes, there's no 9th, 10th. Ishika thinks, yes, on point presentation, but yes, we are going to go into details, not too much detail, but important details we are going to delve into. But after this foundation, the next part of our course, which will be there, we are going to go into the micro level details, every single part. Portuguese, where, kiske saath, which ruler fought, which areas eventually captured, every single part of our modern Indian history will be going through. Don't worry about that. Let's resume then. Okay. Yeah. So now you see that Mir Jafar is still the Nawab. Now, what happened 1857, Mir Jafar becomes, but then after some time, he's continuously is being asked by Robert Clive, okay, give me presents, give me money. He's looting money as well. So he's becoming unhappy. He's saying, okay, we thought that English will be helpful for the Bengal, but they are draining us the money. So he rebels. He becomes a rebel. And so I'll talk about this later on. But so what was the significance of the War of Plassey? So it was the first political victory of English in India. First political victory. Mir Jafar as Nawab appointed by the company. By the company. It changed the position of the company from trading to more now political. So you see the transition. British control over economic resources of Bengal started happening. How? Because Robert Clive became governor, got access to, and also free trade, everything, economic resources. So Battle of Buxar. Now what happened in intervening period, I'll talk about. So 1759, Mir Jafar was unhappy. He fought with the British and lost. His son-in-law, Mir Qasim, was made again. His son-in-law was made Nawab. But after 2-3 years, 1764, he also felt that it, went against British. He felt that the company is not doing good. There are certain issues. So he fled to Awadh in 1764 and he formed an alliance with Shuja-ud-Dawla, who was Nawab of Awadh, and Shah Alam II, who was the fugitive Mughal emperor at that time. He forms an alliance with the three. And at that time, English army was led by Major Munro. And in the area of Buxar in current day Bihar, English forces defeated the combined forces of Mir Qasim, Shuja-ud-Dawla, and Shah Alam II. And this is another major turning point. The war established the British as a master of Bengal region, and Awadh was placed at their mercy. Now, what were the consequences of the Battle of Buxar? Okay, so the major thing is primary changes. The real power of Bengal now came with English, and Robert Clive reappointed governor and commander-in-chief in 1765 to 67. But here, one more thing is there. Settlement with Nawab of Bengal. What? Mir Jafar again was made the Nawab again. And defense and foreign affairs were surrendered to the company. Now, the defense of the Bengal and foreign affairs were surrendered to company. Diwani rights taken by British. Now, this is very important. Now, at that time, there were two types of roles a state, like let's say Bengal had. One were Diwani and one were Nizamat functions. So Nizamat functions are the civil administration, stayed with British, stayed with the Nawab, but Diwani is the revenue collection. Revenue collection. It was directly with the British. So you can see the money power was entire with British, but civil administration liability was with the Nawab. So Nawab was said as no power, all responsibility. Whereas British was no responsibility, all power. Okay. Civil administration, which is Naib Subadar nominated by the company. Even the Naib Subadar in civil administration was nominated by the company and can be removed by only their consent. So you can see direct interference and power. This is the political function and control which British have taken. Okay. Right. Now, before that, before I jump into Mysore and all, I'll just, after this, what happened? So there was this regulating act, which we'll talk today, Regulating Act of 1773, which was introduced by Britain. Now, whatever was happening in Bengal, the British government was looking from there. Okay, Robert Clive is earning so much money and company is having so much power. We should also get a pie of it, the British government thought. So they said that we want to have some kind of, regulations for how companies should work in India. So the British Parliament passed an act, which is Regulating Act of 1773, which brought the Bengal under now direct control of the under company. And in 1773, the post of governor was removed and it became the Governor General of Bengal. Governor General. And Warren Hastings became the first Governor General of Bengal. I hope it is clear till now what happened. I'll talk about it, all the laws, don't worry. So British conquest of Mysore. So quickly I'll touch this. After annexing Bengal, British started thinking that there were some important partners. So they had also power in Madras because they were also trading from there, but no direct control of the state as such. And also Bombay. So British started interfering in the internal affairs of various states at that time. And because of it, now what happened was that in 1761, around that time, 1760s, Mysore under the leadership of Hyder Ali was viewed as a threat by neighboring state, which was Marathas, Nizam of Hyderabad and Nawab of Carnatic, which we saw in the map. Okay. And they approached company. So Hyder Ali saw neighboring states as threat to his Mysore empire. So this provided opportunity to company to interfere in this conflict and to annex not only Mysore, but also the Marathas and other rulers of South India. How they did that, I'll talk about it. So with Marathas, they fought 4 wars. They fought 4 wars, which are first Anglo-Mysore War, 1767 to 69, second, 1780 to 84. Here, Hyder Ali was the main. Hyder Ali died during Second Anglo-Mysore War. Third Anglo-Mysore War, 1790 to 92, and fourth Anglo-Mysore War, 1799. In detail, we'll talk about later what happened in these wars, but here, eventually, 1799, what happened, I'll talk about it. So, in 1799, subsidiary alliance was done where British army was kept now, the company's army, in the Mysore state. So they took control indirectly. Now, even Marathas and Anglo-Maratha wars happened. So British conquest of Marathas happened through these 3 wars. First Anglo-Maratha War, 1775 to 1782. Second Anglo-Maratha War, 1803 to 1805. And third Anglo-Maratha War, 1817 to 1818. After this Maratha Confederacy, became, they eventually was done away with. And also Peshwaship, which was the prime minister post or who was the governing person of Marathas, was abolished. So this is how they took control of, and it was eventually disintegrated into some of the princely states, and some of the regions were kept with the British. Anglo-Carnatic Wars. Now in Carnatic, as we've seen in the map, the coastal Tamil Nadu, Andhra region, though the British and French came to India for trading, so it's not purposes, they were ultimately drawn into the politics of India. Both had visions for establishing political power over the region. So the Anglo-French rivalry in India is reflected the traditional rivalry of England and France. So the Anglo-Carnatic wars are not the wars with Carnatic state at that time. It's the Anglo-French wars. They use this region for their own rivalry, which was across the world happening. So specifically in India, the rivalry in the form of 3 Carnatic wars decided once for all English and not French were able. So these wars are between Anglo and French. Basically, that who will be controlling the rule in India. Eventually, Anglo or the English won and established their rule all in the country. So now let's again quickly revise it. Death of Aurangzeb, 1707. Farrukh Siyar issues Farman. It becomes the Magna Carta of East India Company. 1722, Awadh is established by Sadat Khan, which is the successor state. 1724, Nizamul Mulk founded state of Hyderabad. He was initially Wazir in Mughal Empire, but he left. And 1729, King Marthand Verma became ruler of Kerala. And 1739, Nadir Shah invaded India. 1748, Ahmad Shah Abdali's invasion. 1756. So do we need to make hard copy of this PPT? No need. Okay, no need. 1756, Sirajud-Dowla became the Nawab of Bengal in 1756. Battle of Plassey, British defeated Sirajud-Dowla. And Battle of Buxar we've read and British won. Of course, there are multiple wars which we've read after that. Now, what are the policies which British government used to conquer India and various other parts? Now, we've read they have now conquered Bengal. They've conquered some of the regions in South after Anglo-Carnatic Wars. They've conquered some of the areas of Mysore Empire and also used subsidiary lines, which we'll talk about here. Also, they have conquered some of the areas of Maratha Confederacy as well. Now, what were the policies used by British to conquer India? Number one is policy of ring fence, which was primarily used from 65 to 1813. Subsidiary alliances from 1798 onwards. And doctrine of lapse is from 1846 onwards. We'll talk about it separately. So policy of ring fence, 1765 to 1813. So this policy was associated with Governor Generals Robert Clive and Warren Hastings. We'll talk about them as well. It aimed at creating buffer zones. Now let's say, what is a ring fence? Let's say this is Bengal. But I'm not happy that anyone can attack me from all sides. So what I want to create a fence around me. What I'll do is I'll create some kind of buffer zones. So it is a policy of defense of their neighbors' frontiers. That if I, rather than creating my own frontier, I should protect my neighbors so that my core area is protected. So it is policy of defense of neighbors' frontiers for safeguarding their own territories. Okay. Like for example, Awadh. This policy of Warren Hastings was reflected in his war against Marathas and Mysore. So it was not so in Anglo-Maratha or Anglo-Mysore war. It wasn't that Maratha Confederacy was taken directly by British or Mysore entirely by British. It is they kept their subsidiary alliance with them. That is, they kept their forces to ensure that these regions are protected, and because of which our core areas around Madras, Bengal is protected. British had made Awadh as a buffer state to protect their territory in Bengal against invasion of Marathas and Afghans. During Mysore campaign, Marathas, Hyderabad and Karnataka were acting as buffer for English territory of Madras. And during Anglo-Afghan war, company used Sindh and Punjab as their buffer state. I hope you have understood policy of ring fence. Any doubt? Is there any information overload till now today? Be honest. Any information overload till now? Because I'm going pretty slow. No, it was not fortification, Manchu. It was more of, it is not fortification, a ring fence. A ring fence means that I am protecting my neighbor's frontiers through my army. That is policy of ring fence. So that my core area, my house is protected. Okay. Okay, very good. Many dates to remember. As I said, factual, don't worry too much. Just the sequence, remember as of now. Structure. If dates are not being remembered, not a problem. It will be, I tell you, easily you will remember it. Once we'll go into the core areas and revision, don't worry. As of now, just the structure, sequence of events. Because right now you need to know that what is happening in a sequence and who are how British created its foothold, and because after that only you will understand the future concerns, issues, challenges. And this is a very hot area, very important area where UPSC loves asking. Subsidiary alliance. Now this is very important. Now who introduced it from British side? It is Lord Wellesley. Okay. Lord Wellesley is the Governor General who introduced it in 1798. This policy devised by Lord Wellesley. It was an extension of ring fence system, which sought to reduce Indian states into a position of dependence on British government. Means basically directly that army can be kept. Like that they now under subsidiary alliance, for example, let's say Mysore. Mysore now cannot keep its own army, They have to keep British army for their protection. And the payment will be done by them only. And they also have to keep one resident in the court. So basically, it was an extension of ring fence, but it led to position of entire dependence on British government for their own defense. The British would be responsible for protecting their ally from internal and external threats to their power. In the territory of ally, let's say for this example, Mysore, a British army contingent army would be stationed. The ally would have to provide the resources for maintaining this contingent. And the ally needs to disband their own army. The ally needs to act on the advice of British resident. Whatever they say, advice they have to ask, who was attached to the court. This is subsidiary alliance. Many states were conquered because of this. So British eventually were using, not conquered, even though they were independent states, but subsidiary alliance somewhere, because the army was there, resident was there was direct control which the company could exercise now. Doctrine of lapse, very important again. Associate Governor General Lord Dalhousie, 1846 onwards, he introduced it. So he was not the originator of the policy. However, he is the one who popularized it. It was further extension of policy of subsidiary lands, further extension. So under this, any princely state under subsidiary alliance system would automatically be annexed directly by the company if the ruler either incompetent or died without a male heir. If the ruler is incompetent or has died without a male heir. This policy did not allow for adopted son. Where most common example here is Jhansi. If you've heard, right? Jhansi Rani Lakshmi Bai, what happened was this doctrine of lapse was used. That is why she fought, because the son was adopted. The company would annex the kingdom if the ruler was incompetent or not capable as well. Now you see what is happening here. The continuous annexation is happening, subsidiary lines is happening, and this is how from 1764 to primarily 1857, consolidation of British Empire, of English company or British Empire. Now, why 1857? Why not later? I'll talk about gradually. Now, during this period, British also, Kadi is asking what are the parameters of incompetence. Now, these would be very random parameters, which British, so they were not defined parameters of incompetence. This could be like the ruler is drinks too much, is not concerned about the administration or maladministration or no finances to run properly, like that. Okay. Revenue settlement systems introduced by British. Now British were gaining territories, right? But they were also becoming masters. They had got Diwani rights to begin with, and then overall administration in many areas. Okay. And to run an administration, what is required? Money. And for money, what is the way to raise is tax. And at that time, the biggest way the tax could be raised was through revenue settlement systems, revenue from lands, from farmers, right? Like that. Biggest source of revenue was that. Now, what were these settlements, different kinds of systems which are established by British? Let's go into it. So number one is permanent settlement system. Permanent settlement system was introduced in 1793 by Lord Cornwallis. He was the second Governor General of Bengal. He covered the around 1/5 of British territory in India, including Bengal. So it was introduced by Lord Cornwallis. In fact, under him, it was a person, John Shore, who was first time introduced it, but under Lord Cornwallis, it was introduced. Covered around 1/5 of British territory. So now remember, British, this permanent settlement system, majorly eastern part of the country, Bengal, Bihar, Odisha, these are the major regions. Under this, what happened was, so this Ijara system, which was from the times of Mughals, that was discontinued. I'll not talk about that. So company recognized zamindars as owners of soil under permanent settlement. And they were given permanent heredity to collect revenue. Now, there was a fixed amount with zamindars. Now, let's say there's a parcel of land. Zamindar is the owner of land. British said, okay, we are not worried about what you're growing or how much you're growing. We are least concerned. And we want permanent settlement, that every year on a fixed date, we need 100 rupees, let's, from you. If Zamindar collects 200, 300, 400, we do not worry. We need 100 rupees a year. It is your headache, whatever you collect. So the Zamindars were to pay a fixed amount of land revenue on a fixed date every year. If Zamindar failed to pay the amount, let's say 100 wasn't paid, on a fixed date, company could sell their land via public auction. So Mansi is asking, sir, these were Governor General Office of Bengal or India? Till 1833, they were Governor General of Bengal. But they had overall charge of other territories which British governed. Okay. But their nomenclature is Governor General of Bengal. The next revenue settlement is Ryotwadi system. So under this system, now earlier, who was the owner of the land? Zamindar in permanent settlement. Here, settlement was made directly by the government directly with cultivator, not the land. So cultivator were the owners of the land, who thus were the proprietor or owner, but only for a period. So this time was fixed for 30 years, after which it was subject to reassessment. So for 30 years, the revenue was fixed and resettlement was done on updated terms. Government share was fixed at 55% of total produce, which was the highest ever share, was kept as a settlement. Cultivator had the right to sublet his land holdings, transfer, mortgage, or sell it. He is not evicted from his holdings by government so long as he pays the state demand for land revenue. Ryotwadi system was introduced primarily in the southern part of the country, Madras Presidency, by Captain Reed, assisted by Thomas Munro, first in Bada Mahal district of Madras Presidency. So let's look at this. Now, the next system is Mahalwadi. Okay, just a second. Yeah, Mahalwadi. Third system. Holt Mackenzie, in his minute in 1819, emphasized of existence of village. So let's not go into it. So in this system, Mahal means refers to estate with many cultivators, mostly like a village or group of villages. So now a village or group of villages had to collectively pay to government. This is Mahalwadi system, primarily in North India. Okay. So land revenue systems, permanent settlement, Rothwadi, Mahalwadi, Lord Cornwallis, Thomas Munro, William Bentinck. We've read who introduced. It's the time of so Bengal, Madras, Northwest provinces. Clear? I hope it is clear. Again, a lot of questions have been asked in past about it. Let's move forward. Regulating Act of 1773. Very, very important. Why I have included it and why I'll be going briefly into it is because it is equally important for your polity. Chapter 1. Historical background. Have you read it? I'll start it with Lakshmikant. Okay, great. So Regulating Act of 1773. So this is where beautifully, you can connect with polity and history. And that is where you'll start gaining the interest. Okay, that is, what we were reading in polity didn't make any sense. We were unable to remember the facts. Now we are understanding what is happening. History, if you are clear, you'll easily understand chapter 1 there. Now, Regulating Act of 1773. What I told you, remember that Robert Clive, there is dual government, Diwani is there, Nizamat is there. But British also says that now the company is becoming strong in India, they should be regulated. So the British Parliament passes Regulating Act of 1773 to regulate affairs of company in India. Company in India. Now this, what it says, the Governor General of Bengal now, so Governor of Bengal, post which was there, who was that? At that time before 1773, from 1772, it was Warren Hastings. Now he became the Governor General of Bengal. Council of Governor General was to be elected. So a council was also created. And there was so Council of 4 was elected by Court of Directors of East India Company, English East India Company. Now, Court of Directors had to elect Council of 4 who would assist Governor General. All 4 members of the council had voting rights along with Governor General, who had additional casting vote. Let's say there were 2 votes. So whatever, say, Governor General would vote, let's say 1 additional would become casting vote, and that would be the decision. It created Supreme Court of Calcutta in 1774, this Regulating Act. And with Chief Justice and 3 judges, it strengthened the control of British government over company. Yes, because they were now regulating. By requiring Court of Directors, which was the governing body of the company, to report on its revenue, civil and military affairs. Now, British said that we want to control your affairs. So please, company, your Court of Directors, report us on your revenue, civil and military affairs. Right? Okay, so it is clear. Now, what was the importance of this act? This was the first step taken by British government to control and regulate the affairs of East India Company in India. And it recognized for the first time the political and administrative functions of the company, that they had some political and administrative functions. So basically, major point is Governor of Bengal became Governor General of Bengal. And there would be Council of Four, Supreme Court. Major three, broadly you should remember. Now there is an amending act of 1781. It's not a regulating act or a major act, just amending act. Now what happened? Why it was necessary? Now Supreme Court power was not defined in the previous act. It said Supreme Court should be there. But what Supreme Court did from 1773 till 1781, it felt it had infinite power. It started questioning the decision of Governor General, Council, Revenue Affairs, everything. So the amending act had to be introduced to define. So this act was majorly to define powers of Supreme Court of Bengal. Okay, majorly that's it, what you need to know. So under that, it exempted Governor General and Council from jurisdiction of Supreme Court, exempted the company from the jurisdiction of Supreme Court for the official actions, like this, all this. So basically, you just need to remember this as of now. Define the power of Supreme Court of Bengal. You can read it today, the details. After this, Pitt's India Act of 1784, another important act passed by the British Parliament. Now it created another body. So number one, 1773, what was that? Governor General of Bengal. Number two, what? Sorry, ignore the balloons. It is picking up. It's not my birthday today. It's just picking up, the gestures which I am saying. So I won't say 1 and 2 because it will pick more gestures then. So ignore the balloons which came on the screen. So now what it did was that Court of Directors could select Council of Four. Now Pitt's India Act created another body, and this was Board of Control. Board of Control. Now it distinguished between the commercial function of company under Court of Directors and political functions under Board of Control. Now this Board of Control was not under a company. It was a separate body created by government in London to basically control the political functions of the company. So the board control consisted of whom? Chancellor, Secretary of State, and 4 members of Privy Council. So basically these were members of British Parliament. The Chancellor, Secretary of State. But okay. So Board of Control was allowed to supervise all civil and military operations of company. All the civil and so direct interference of Board of Control in all civil military operations. Number of members in Executive Council, which were 4 plus 4 other than Governor General, were reduced to 3. Now became 3, of whom Commander-in-Chief was to be 1. So there has to be one Commander-in-Chief. That's Pitt's India Act broadly. Okay, clear? Board of Control is the major part here. And previous were Governor General, Supreme Court, and Council of 4. Clear? Moving forward there is another amending act of 1786. Basically, not very important. This was introduced to introduce Cornwallis. Now, Cornwallis was a hero in the American War of Independence. And he was a soldier. He was a commander. British thought that we would send him to India as a Governor General. Okay. Now, Lord Cornwallis said that I'll go, but I have 2 conditions. Firstly, I should be given power to override the decision of my council in special cases. That is, I should be given veto power in special cases. And I should also be Commander-in-Chief. So this act was passed to give Lord Cornwallis these 2 powers. That's it. Simple. Okay. Now let's look at quickly who were the Governor Generals at that time. Warren Hastings, 1772 to 1785. So he was regulating Act of 1773 was passed under him. He brought dual government of Bengal to an end under this, right? Dual government. He divided Bengal into districts. He started, okay, don't go into too much details. He started Diwani, Fauzdari, Adalat. Act of 1781 was passed under him. Pitt's India Act of 1784 was passed under him. Rohilla War of 1774. First Maratha War. Second Mysore War. Foundation of Asiatic Society of Bengal was done by him. He wrote introduction to first English translation of Gita, which is by Charles Wilkins. And he was eventually impeached in England. He was the first Governor General of Bengal. Okay. Lord Cornwallis, as I said, he was made now the Governor General of Bengal for after the act. So he stayed from 1786 to 93. Third Anglo-Mysore War and was fought under him. He was the first person to codify laws in 1793, which was known as Cornwallis Code. He created the post of district judge. He's called the father of civil service in India. He was also known for Europeanization of administrative machinery. He introduced police reforms and introduced permanent settlement in Bengal. Fine. And then was Sir John Shore. He was known for Charter Act of which we'll talk about, Charter Act of 1793 and policy of non-intervention, that he didn't interfere in any matters of other states. Now, what is the difference now you'll ask between, okay, Regulating Act 1773 and 1793 is known as Charter Act. What is the difference? So Regulating Act is to regulate affairs of company in India, and Charter Act is dealt with the royal charter for East India Company towards trade. So it is charter given by the Queen or King for trade of, giving the charter to do trade by East India Company, just for trade purposes. So then comes the Charter Act of 1793. Basically, it extended the powers for trade. So now what is the primary thing? It extended the powers to all governor generals, which were given to only Cornwallis, were now given, which was the veto power, were extended to all governor generals of Bengal. It also appointed certain senior officials, that the royal approval was mandated now, that king or queen's approval has to be there for governor general, governor or commander in chief. Senior officials of company were debarred from leaving India without permission. Doing so would be treated as resignation. Payments of officials. It laid down that members of board of control and their staff, which were in London, right? I said, it is in London, sitting there, board of control. Their staff was to be paid out of the Indian revenues, and it continued till 1919, Secretary of State and others. The company was also asked to pay 5 lakh pounds annually to British government, directly draining of wealth. Okay. So now, Lord Wellesley, 1798 to 1805, he was, as I said, subsidiary alliance was introduced. Fourth Mysore war was fought. Second Maratha War, Treaty of Buxar. We'll go into it later on. He took over the administration of Tanjore. So these are the subsidiary alliance treaties. Madras Presidency was formed during his tenure. So Himanshu is asking, sir, in 1793 Act, did the nomenclature of Governor General of Bengal change to Commander in Chief? No. 1793 only and only changed, gave the veto power. Commander in Chief was kept separate as a member of Executive Council. Okay. Now, thereafter, Governor General of Bengal was Sir George Barlow. Vellore Mutiny was there. He made economy and peace his chief objects. Not too important, just for your reference, I'm including so that there is sequence of how we are discussing. Lord Minto won. 1817 to 13, he concluded Treaty of Amritsar with Ranjit Singh, who was the head of Sikh Empire at that time. So at that time, Sikhs have not come under him. Remember, 1813, the Charter Act was passed under him. 1813. Now, what is the Charter Act? We'll look into it. Charter Act of 1813. So it abolished. Now, Charter Act again for trade, but it abolished the trade monopoly which company had in India. Only in 2 areas they could continue the trade, which was the monopoly of company over trade in tea and with trade with China. That's it. It asserted sovereignty of British Crown over company's territories in India. And for the first time, it ascertained that the company's territory in India directly comes under British Crown, that they are part of British Crown. It allowed Christian missionaries to come to India for enlightening people. It provided for spread of education, revival of literature, and promotion of sciences among inhabitants of British territories in India. And planned for establishing a Sanskrit college in Calcutta. So all these were Charter Act, authorized local governments in India to impose taxes on persons. Then Lord Hastings became the Governor General. So don't confuse, one more problem. Many people confuse between Warren Hastings and Lord Hastings, different people. Lord Hastings is the Francis Hastings. So he is separate Governor General of Bengal. He adopted policy of intervention in war. Anglo-Nepal war and Treaty of Sagoli was signed in. So these are some of the important known suppression of Pindaris, which is associated with Third Anglo-Maratha War, which we'll talk in detail. As of now, not necessary for you to go into that part. Okay. Lord Amherst after that, not very important. And after that, 1833 onwards, Governor Generals of India came up. So like Lord William Bentinck was the last Governor General of Bengal and first Governor General of India. An abolition of sati was done under him on the efforts of Raja Ram Mohan Roy. He was credited with suppression of Thuggis, Charter Act of 1833, Resolution of 1835. All this was done under him. Now, one very important thing as we are moving along. So he signed a treaty of perpetual friendship with Ranjit Singh in 1831. So Priyanshi is asking a very interesting question we can go through. Sir, can we say that Governor Generals in a way modernized India's administration management, even if it lead to fulfillment of their own needs? And yes, absolutely. The current administration, the way it is working, it is pretty much on the British line still now. And it is still the way how it is with Superintendent of Police, the district magistrate, even the courts, everything is designed as per them. We'll go through the education system, the evolution of civil services, the evolution of courts, everything you'll see how it was developed. So it is correct, but we'll go in detail later on. Now thereafter, Charter Act of 1833. See, remember, Charter Acts have come after 20 years each, 1793, 1813, 1833, and the next one will be 1853. That is where the last Charter Act. 1833 is very important. It made Governor General of Bengal post as Governor General of India and vested all civic and military powers in him. Led to end of all commercial activities, even the monopoly which they had in trade with tea and with trade with China also finished. Territories in India were now to be governed in name of the crown. A distinction was made between executive and legislative powers. Now, until now, there was only executive council of Governor General. But now, in this executive council, there was distinction made between executive and legislative duties of Governor General Council. Still now, the legislative council was not made, but the functions were divided. A fourth member was added as law member who would only participate when legislation was being decided. So now again, 3 members became 4. Fourth was the law member. So now after this, who were the Governor Generals? Now I'll talk about there were some of the very important things which happened. Sir Charles Metcalfe was 1835-36. He was the Governor General and he liberated Indian press. 1836 to 42, first Anglo-Afghan war happened and British lost. Because of which even Lord Auckland had to lose his position as the Governor General of India. A tripartite treaty was signed between East India Company, Maharaja Ranjit Singh and Shah Shuja of Afghanistan. Lord Ellenborough was the Governor General 42 to 43 and he's known for annexation of Sindh. He war with Sindh and annexed it. 1844 to 48, Lord Hardinge won. So Anglo-Sikh War and Treaty of Lahore is signed and here he is known for Anglo-Sikh. So 2 Sikh wars also happens. Anglo-Sikh War, 2 wars in 1845-46 and 1848-49. And we'll conclude very soon. Just after this, we'll conclude the session after Lord Dalhousie and we'll discuss and we'll continue from here tomorrow. So Lord Dalhousie, 1848 to 56. So he introduced the doctrine of lapse, which we talked about and annexed many states. Second Anglo-Sikh War is associated with him, and he annexed Punjab thereafter. He's involved in, these was Wood's Educational Dispatch of 1854. So the opening of Anglo vernacular schools and government colleges, he was a person associated with it. We'll talk about this as well, development of education in British in the next lecture. But today I'm talking Wood's Educational Dispatch. He made Shimla the summer capital of British. Gurkha regiments were raised under him. Engineering college was established in Roorkee under him. Foundation of modern postal systems in India was established under him. Separate PWD department was set up. Railway Minute of 1853, which led to first railway line between Bombay and Thane in 1853. Telegraph lines of 4,000 miles was laid in India under him, and Post Office Act reforms happened. So NCI is asking, sir, was there any specific tenure for Governor Generals? No. There was no specific tenure. Ganges Canal was declared open in 1854 and Widow Remarriage Act was passed under him after efforts of Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. This is where we conclude today. And I'll share the presentation immediately in PDF form after this session. But now I want to discuss that. I hope you're clear with what's happening. You're getting a fair idea of where we are. So we started with the advent of Portuguese, how they consolidated, but politically they couldn't grow too much. But English came, they got initial farms set, they started doing trade in certain areas. 1717 Farrukhsiyar gave them Royal Farman. In Bengal, set up factory, Hooghly, other areas, villages were acquired. Fort William was set up. Now, Sirajud-Dowla, that is where the fight happened. British won in Battle of Plassey. Mir Jafar was made the Nawab, but governor was Robert Clive. But Mir Jafar became unhappy, fought war, got defeated. Mir Qasim was made the Nawab thereafter. But now he also became rebel, joined hands with Awadh and Mughal, fought Battle of Buxar in 1764. Okay. And got defeated. And now Diwani rights directly came under British, which is the revenue collection. And Nizamat functions of civil administration was the Nawab, but had no power, no teeth. Eventually, the Regulating Act came, which directly gave control to the Warren Hastings, who was Governor General of Bengal, now had entire control of Bengal. And that is where the period of further things happen. Parallelly, policies like revenue collection policies are happening. Parallelly, the policy of ring fence, subsidiary alliance thereafter, and doctrine of lapse. But at the same time, Anglo-Mysore war, Anglo-Maratha wars is also happening. So we've understood how they're consolidating British step by step, which are the territories they are annexing. And that is how they are gaining control. At the same time, this Regulating Act of 1773, what it did give power. So created Governor General of Bengal post, Council, Supreme Court. Amending Act 1781, defined powers of Supreme Court. 1784 Pitt's India Act created Board of Control for political functions. 86 Amending Act primarily to give Cornwallis the additional power. Then Charter Act 4, 93, 1813, 1833, 1853. So we'll go into it further moving forward hereafter. We've understood now by whom the Governor Generals were selected. It was by the British Parliament. They were selecting it. Okay. It was the government who was sending, not the company. It was the British through Regulating Act. That is starting from Regulating Act, it was selected by the British. I hope session was interesting. I hope you learned this period. We'll consolidate on this tomorrow, further moving forward. And till now, something is clear. You learned something new. Was this presentation helpful? Was the discussion helpful? Let's have a feedback. Okay, yes. I hope you're getting a little hang of modern Indian history. Okay, great. So idea is, it was good, but facts are becoming bulky to remember. That is why I'm going on a journey. Don't worry about facts now. Just the story. Just the fascination of how stories develop. Problem is, we are trying to learn everything. Never ever we've understood a story behind it. What's happening? If there's no fascination, you'll never ever. So I would recommend certain books. Next session, I'll recommend books which you'll start loving history. So it was great interacting with you. And you can reach out to me for any doubt. I've shared my contact in terms of my Telegram and my email ID. All the very best. And one last very important thing I want to share with you. One quote which I personally believe in a lot, just helped me, and I want you to believe in it. A person is not limited by his or her potential, but by his or her thought. We are not limited by our potential, remember. So set your bar high every single time. Don't think I'm done. We can do anything if we set a target upon. Seriously, you have to just believe. You have to believe that I can be in top 10 rank. And if you believe I can be in that top 10 rank, I'm sure you'll reach it. Sometimes we don't realize how close we are until you ask topper, did you believe that you'll be in top 5? They said, when I got all India rank 6 in UPSC CAP of 2013, I couldn't realize, okay. Then I started to realize it's just about manifestation, about believing that, yes. And I tell you, it works like anything. You have to never say, ye mera level hai. Nahin. Your level is far more. When I did a commando course doing 40-kilometer cross country with 20 kgs weight, I thought I'll be done by 5 kilometers, and I was done by 5 kilometers. I had no energy left. But every step, my mind was saying one more step. And for next 35 kilometers, I did something which was impossible for me. So humans are not limited by their potential, remember it, but by their thought. So with this thought, let's conclude our today's session. Thank you once again, and see you on Wednesday evening, 7 p.m. same time. And let's continue this journey of modern Indian history. Thank you once again, and a very good night to all of you.